Welcome back to the Virtual Ninja Show. My name is Heike and I will be your host. Today it's the last episode of our Ignite special. We are going to talk about deception. And I have Dean with me. Welcome back, Dean, to the show.
Hi Heike, hi everyone.
So who doesn't know Dean? Dean also works on our customer experience team. And Dean, you are basically an advocate for deception. What does it mean exactly, being an advocate on our team for deception?
So an advocate within our team, we spend a lot of time working with our customers, working within our engineering groups, making sure that we are building the best possible products and features that we can for our customers globally to make use of.
And because our features and products and technologies, they're like getting complexer and complexer. So it's basically, you picked one, feature that you thought it's super interesting and you're getting deep into the weeds, right?
Yeah. So I'm the SME within our area on this specific feature.
And it is super exciting. So I remember that it was a long time that we talked about it. Should we do it? Should we not do it? And now it's finally out there. And Dean, let's quickly, educate everyone, like, what is deception? And I think there is also other words out there that people might know better what that is about.
Yeah, thank you, Heike. So deception is something that we've worked on for a number of years, and we're really happy to now bring it out and announce it as part of Ignite. Deception is a feature that's now built into MDE. It's the ability to generate decoys and lures, which we'll talk about later, what they actually are, and give customers the ability to detect very early signs of attacker and malicious activity within their environment.
So when you say a lure, so basically it is similar to honey pots and honey tokens. So you have a little honey somewhere and you try to get the attacker to the honey and then they're basically stuck there and we can detect them in this extra set of, user device better.
Yeah. So the way we do it with an MDE is we take a customer's standard MDE environment, so there's nothing extra to deploy. It's a case of deploy MDE as if you normally would, and we place our deceptive tokens, our lures, onto the devices. And as you say, the entire aim is for an attacker to essentially be confused and not necessarily understand what's real, what's fake. And then when an attacker lands and starts making use of something that's fake, we can generate an alert, and that gives high early visibility to the SOC that there's something malicious going on within their environment.
So I would hope that the attacker is not confused. I hope that the attacker is like super happy on this device and or with that user and just thinks that this is exactly where they need to be. Of course, this all always plays back into our bigger picture, right? So bigger picture is also our automated attack disruption, because if it's actually an alert on one of those specific, I think you call them lures, or like we need to talk about this, but these specific deception components, we know that this is a real alert and we can even, again, be more precise and strict with our automated attack disruption. And you just said it. It is part of Defender for Endpoint. There's nothing, no extra add-on to be purchased. And now let's have a look at the different lures and destroys. How do you call them?
Decoys. Yeah. So let's break into that a second. So within deception, we have three different elements. We have decoys, we have lures, and then we have the management capabilities of how to set all that up. As we mentioned, for management, this is fully built into MDE. It's an aspect of MDE. There's nothing extra to buy, nothing extra to deploy within the customer environment. That's a real differentiator that we have versus other deception, honey token, whatever you want to call it, solutions out there in the market, where fully built into MDE, what a lot of our customers already have fully deployed. To then split a second into decoys and lures. A decoy would be a fake person, so a user that looks very similar to your user and your users within your environment. Same for host names. So we plan and automatically generate fake users and hosts that look very similar to what is actually out there within your real environment. They're the decoys. And then our lures are artifacts that we also plant on the devices which contain reference to those decoys. So the element is, if the attacker doesn't stumble on the decoys naturally, we plant other artifacts within the environment to lure them in to then make use of the decoy. And that's the activity that we'll alert on within MDE.
I think this is actually a very important piece that you just mentioned. There is machine learning behind it that will generate host names and usernames very similar, or like that they fit into the environment. So it's not just suddenly something that really doesn't match. So very, very good to lure them into those devices or user accounts.
What we do there is we take the telemetry that we already know from the MD environment for that customer, and we look at the usernames, we look at the host names, and that's part of the logic that goes into our machine learning and generates those fake lures and decoys within the environment. So for every customer, it will be different because we're learning from their environment.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So I think now I'm curious on how this looks like in the portal. I know you told me it's right there, but I think there is still something to enable and configure, because it's not just suddenly deploying some devices and users. So can we have a look at the portal?
Yeah, of course. First step, Hiker, is to go into MDE, as always, into M365 Defender, and go down into the settings option. And this is an MDE feature. So we go into endpoints. And then the very first thing to do is, within advanced features, scroll down to deception and make sure that's enabled. It will be off by default. This option, though, will now be there for any customer that has a tenant that's public preview. They turn the slider to on, click Save Preferences. 30 seconds later, they will then see a brand new option called Deception Rules underneath Rules.
Wow,
And
okay.
this is where we then configure a deception rule. We can see here, we have some from some of my colleagues. So just to have a quick walk through one of those and start to explain it. Here are the decoys, and let's talk about those first that we spoke about. What this has done is taken a set of decoys and created them automatically based on the telemetry that the MDE can see from within our tenant.
You said now decoys, but I thought lures and decoys is different, hosts and accounts. So now they are all in the same section though?
So hosts and accounts are both decoys. Lures is something slightly different. A lure would be a file, an artifact where we're making reference to the decoys. So a script file or a document, for example, where we're referencing the decoys that deception has created.
Got it. Okay. So the first we need to have our decoys, where we then later place the lure.
Correct. Yes. And again, a lot of this is automatic. So for argument's sake, if we go through and create a new deception rule, like deception, and something to mention here as well, we have the different lure types. So this is where customers have the ability to decide, do they want to just plant, for example, documents, link files, again, where we're containing information to lure an attacker to the decoys. That's where the lure phrase comes from. We also have advanced lures, which is something that we're really proud of and something we can do that we think is really special, where we can actually inject reference of the users and the hosts into Windows itself. So we can plan credentials, we can plan evidence of the hosts. So for an attacker making use of all the commodity malware and attack penetration testing tooling out there, they can dump credentials from Windows, as an example, which is a very common technique we see all the time. The attacker will see a mixture of the customer's real users that are on the device mixed in with our fake decoys. Again, making it really, really hard for an attacker to differentiate between what's real and what's fake. And we do as much as we can to make the fake accounts look as attractive as possible so that we lure the attacker to those, and then that's where deception comes in and it'll generate an alert and, as you say, tie into attack disruption if an attacker makes use of those fake decoys.
So if you select advanced, all of this will happen then automatically, or do you still need to select which user should be cached and all these info? Oh, you can even select both. That
Correct.
was my next
Yeah,
question.
it's one, either or both. And to answer your question, it's all automatic. This is we've worked very, very hard to make deception an extremely easy feature to use. It is a case of, as we'll see, turn the feature on, name it, decide what you want to do, next, finish, and that's it. The feature's then rolled out within the environment.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And that means even if you use the advanced, that would have been my next question, you can still plant some lures on it. Okay.
And then this is where we then get the decision point of, do we want to plant the decoys and lures on every device within the environment? When I say device, Windows client in this case, or do we want to keep it specifically to a number of set tags? So for example, there might be different decoys and lures you want to use within different parts of the environment that are tagged with different tags. Or for example, if you're a very, very large customer and you're starting to use deception for the first time, you might want to contain the deployment to just a few machines initially. This is where you'd make that decision.
So are you saying that we are planting the lure on the devices that are part of the real environment of the customer?
Yes. Depending what the customer picks, but yes, is the answer. So will this be all Windows client devices that are onboarded into MDE right now, or just devices with a certain tag? So there's that flexibility there for customers to decide, do they want to plant the decoys and lures to every Windows client onboarded with an MDE, or just certain devices with a set tag that they define?
I thought the lure will be planted on our decoys. Now I'm confused.
So it's all, think of it as within the deception rule, it's got two elements to it. It's got the decoys and it's got the lures. The decoy is the actual fake user and fake host itself. And then the lure is usually a file. So it could be a link, it could be a script, it could be a fake document where we're making reference to that decoy. So then as an attacker stumbles onto that lure, so they will then see the information and hopefully it'll look very attractive to the attacker. It'll give them the ability to do all the things they want to do bad within an environment, and they'll make use of that fake user or connect to that fake host. And when I say fake user, fake host, that's the decoy. As you're defining your deception rule, all of the decoys and lures will be placed onto the real environment. There's no deception environment. The deception environment is the customer's environment. So the customer's onboarded MDE machines become, to go back to an old phrase that we don't really use, but just for clarity, the honeypots essentially are the real devices. So and so there'll be evidence of fake users, fake hosts, files, lure files that contain the fake host information, the fake user information on the customer's devices. Depending on what they pick here, will just be how wide that scope is. Is it just on more devices, or is it everything? If that makes sense.
Perfect. Let's continue and have a look at the decoys.
Sure. So if we wanted to have it to everything, for argument's sake, we click next. This will take several minutes. What's happening here is in real time. We've actually looked at the telemetry within the onboarded environment, and here are the fake users and the fake host names. We do a check to make sure that they don't actually exist. That's obviously an important thing. We don't want a fake decoy to be someone who actually exists. And we've generated this list to be as lifelike and as much of a clone of the real environment as possible.
So it says in the description, decoys are non-existent accounts and hosts. So in the end, if this is created, there is also not an extra host created. I thought there was now a virtual machine being spit up.
No, it's evidence on the onboarded MDE environment of a machine. So if an attacker starts to perform reconnaissance, let's say, or dump credentials to look at active user accounts, they'll see evidence of these fake decoys. But what we're not doing is actually creating a VM or creating a user.
Okay.
We're mimicking what that would look like on the Windows endpoint so that from the attacker's perspective, it looks real, but actually it's not. And then if we see an attacker make use of it, that's where we know there's something suspicious going on and we'll generate alerts, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Got it. Makes sense.
Before we do that, what I just want to call out as well is it's actually possible to delete any of these if you look at them and think, this one looks a bit weird, the user, let's delete that one. We can do that. If we then want to add a new one, again, that's fine. We can do that. If we want to edit it, again, that's an option. So yeah, again, let's get this one. This one looks a bit weird. So if we delete these, this now looks like a really good example of, okay, this is going to be hard for an attacker to necessarily realize that these are not real artifacts within my environment.
Mm-hmm.
So Luz, this is where we have two options. You can either use our auto-generated Luz, where we have link files, batch files, scripts, a number of artifacts, let's call it that way, where we then reference the decoys. So we want to make it as attractive as possible for an attacker to land onto these lures and lure them to make use of a decoy. An additional option we now have is it's actually possible for customers to create their own lure and upload it. So that would be a document, a script, a file, you name it. Again, a config file, a link file. We see examples where people will put out, company branded finance documents and things that look incredibly attractive for an attacker. And it would be very, very difficult for an attacker to believe this is anything but a real document with real evidence of a host or a user within your environment.
So what is a good practice here? Like you said, there is like planting path was temp. Is this a good path where you usually put this, or do you usually use the document folder of a user? And if so, what if you pick a lure and it's called, I don't know, finance doc, and that file already exists on the user device? Like, what's happening here?
So we will check if the file exists. So that's something we'll do. We will check, but we're not going to create something that already exists. We really recommend, and this is where we've given the flexibility for customers to create this in a way that makes sense for them. So there may be certain applications that is a common, let's go down the finance route, because that's a very obvious example. There may be known finance applications and finance configuration files that are used within your environment. You may want to create dummy examples of that actually contain the fake decoys and the fake information. I say there's no set recommendation because it really does depend on the customer environment, and that's exactly why we've configured it in the way that we have. If a customer isn't at that stage yet, that's fine. They can go back and use our auto-generated Luz. That's fine. That's something that we've designed. We've worked very hard and very happy for customers to use that. As customers then mature within their deception journey, that's where we then give the option to create your own fake documents and Luz and plant them in places that make sense within your environment. There's also the option of, do you want to plant them to all devices or just some? And also, do you want to plant the file as a hidden attribute file? We have that as default, but again, there may be some examples where customers don't want to do that. And we give that flexibility.
Perfect. Okay, so now we use the auto-generated lures and go next.
Click next. This will give us a good summary of what we've done. We've created a new deception rule, like a deception. It's a test in this example, but we're going to deploy it to every Windows client within our tenant. So again, what that will do is put basic and advanced Luz, so basic files, config files, links, but also we'll actually start manipulating Windows essentially to show evidence of these hosts and users within Windows. So when an attacker uses attack tools, they'll start to see evidence of this as well. Mm-hmm. Here are the aliases that the users and the hosts that deception has recommended. Again, we can delete, we can add. That's our gift as well, and then save. And cool. That will now start to deploy this out to the environment, and there we go.
Okay, and I see that you created actually a couple of rules, Dean. What is like best practices? Do customer need to create multiple? It depends? Like, what's our guidance here?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. I think again, it for some customers it may make perfect sense to have a set rule across the entire environment. There may be other areas where you might want to set certain laws, custom laws, that documents that have been created within certain parts of the environment. For testing purposes, you may want to have a small set, and then you may want to have your wide deception rule everywhere, and then perhaps custom laws and advanced laws in just a certain area. Again, we work really hard to allow customers to have that flexibility. I would recommend not overcomplicating it. Start small and build up where it makes sense. We've not created the option to have multiple rules because we necessarily believe every customer should have multiple rules. We've given it for where it makes sense for customers that that's an option they can have.
So these are not real devices, but are present in the Defender for Endpoint environment. So I would assume they don't show up on devices. They don't show up anywhere because they are not real devices. But if there's an alert, it will have a tag deception. So that is when you know that is not a real device. Or how is this? Yeah. I would be confused if there's suddenly an alert from a device that doesn't exist as a device.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me take you over to an example alert. The way that it works is the alert doesn't generate on the fake, let's call it host. It generates on the actual device, the MDE device that had that activity on it. Mm-hmm. So for example, if we saw that someone had dumped credentials and then started to make use of a hiker test, fake deception decoy, wherever that hiker test user was being used and tried to connect to and connect with, that is where we would generate the MDE alert and subsequent incident from. And you can see here as well, what we've done is we've added a deception tag so that whenever deception creates an incident or an alert, it's very clear for the SOC to understand, this is deception. This is where someone's tripped one of our deception rules, and they can then investigate from there.
Would they see, if you click on that alert, what deception rule triggered it? Like what user account, what host, what document?
Yeah, that's exactly it. They'll start to see all of the evidence and all of the information as they would as normal. This is quite a busy alert, so a lot has gone on, but they will see in here the actual connection to a host, and it will show us the actual connection from, and the connection in this case HPVM033 is the
deception host name. I see it. Wow. Okay.
The decoy that was matched within a rule. Yeah, exactly.
This is so awesome. You were just saying we don't want customers to, of course, go crazy wild right away. So test it out in basically chunks. So create tags or something where you can test it out and see what kind of alerts and how everything comes together. Are there any other recommendations that you can recommend from all the work that you do with our customers and that you worked on now over the last period of time on this feature?
Use it. It's awesome. You're right. It's again, everything. Yes to everything you've said. It makes sense, particularly in large organizations and large environments, to start small, get familiar with the feature, get familiar with how it works, test it out, allow your pen testing team to test it out. We hope they'll be impressed. That's certainly in line with the feedback we've been getting so far. And then start to deploy it and roll it into your existing SOC processes. As you can see, it generates an alert like any other MDE alert would be, plus the deception tag. So I'd hope it'd be very easy to roll into existing SOC and security processes. But yeah, other than that, make use of it. Start small, work your way out, and hopefully it'll make it a lot harder for attackers to move around within your environment.
Yes, and so it's super simple, right? You enable it in advanced settings. Suddenly, after it's enabled, there is a new section in the settings where you can then configure your deception rule. You define the scope. You can see what are the names auto-generated. You can remove them. You can provide a lure. You can have us pick a lure and distribute it. And last question that just came up, is it for all Windows clients? Is it like a specific operating system? Do they need to be on a Windows 11? Does it work on Windows 10?
Yeah, Windows 10, Windows 11.
Okay, thanks. So I think, Dean, we will put a link to our documentation, so people can then also read a little bit more in this area. But I think it sounds super simple, and all we want to ask everyone is to try it out. And of course, give feedback. There is a feedback hub. There's also the feedback option in the portal. And we're looking forward to hearing how people like it.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that, thanks everyone for watching, and see you soon when there is the next episode in the Virtual Ninja Show. Bye.